Dr. Hwan Park rubbed his tired eyes as the midnight hours ticked by in his South Korean observatory. The soft glow of multiple screens illuminated his face while he studied the unusual patterns dancing across his monitors. His coffee had long gone cold, forgotten in the excitement of his work. The signal analysis software kept flagging anomalies that defied natural explanation. At first, he thought it was just another false positive, perhaps a pulsar or some other cosmic phenomenon. But as he dug deeper into the data, his heart began to race. The patterns were too precise, too structured. They repeated with mathematical precision that simply couldn't occur in nature. His fingers flew across the keyboard, running every verification test he could think of. Each result only confirmed what he was beginning to suspect. These signals were artificial. After 20 years of searching the stars for signs of intelligent life, he had finally found it. He reached for his phone with trembling hands and dialed the emergency contact number he had memorized, but never thought he would use. "This is Dr. Park. Get me the Science Council. Now." Within hours, observatories around the world confirmed his findings. The signals were coming from multiple sources, all coordinated, all heading toward Earth. The next few days passed in a blur of emergency meetings, press conferences, and endless debriefings. Then they arrived. The first ships appeared in the sky on a clear summer morning. They emerged from what appeared to be tears in space itself, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metallic sheen that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. The vessels took up positions in high orbit, visible to the naked eye as bright points of light that put the stars to shame. Director Ji-Min Lee stood at the window of the newly established Earth Diplomatic Court headquarters, watching the ships through a powerful telescope. As Earth's chosen representative, the weight of humanity's future rested on her shoulders. Her team had prepared for this moment with countless simulations, but nothing could truly prepare them for real first contact. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Council. Their primary ambassador, a being named Tal, was the first to step onto Earth's soil. The landing ceremony took place in a specially prepared field outside Seoul. Tal emerged from their ship walking on two legs, but any similarity to humans ended there. Their iridescent skin seemed to ripple with patterns of light, and their four arms moved with graceful precision as they greeted the assembled world leaders. Ambassador Tal spoke perfect English, their words translated by advanced technology that seemed like magic to human observers. They spoke of peace, of sharing knowledge, of helping humanity join a vast community of intelligent species among the stars. Their technology demonstrations left even the most skeptical scientists speechless. Clean energy, matter replication, gravity control, and medical advances beyond human dreams. The Council shared carefully selected technological insights, starting with improvements to Earth's environmental systems. They helped establish purification plants that cleaned the oceans, devices that pulled carbon from the atmosphere, and energy systems that made fossil fuels obsolete. Each advancement was presented as a gift, a show of good faith. Teams of human scientists began working alongside alien specialists. Dr. Park found himself leading a joint research project on quantum communications, while Director Lee coordinated cultural exchange programs between Earth and various Council member species. The Council's database of alien cultures and civilizations seemed endless, each species more fascinating than the last. Earth's nations, for the first time in history, began to truly unite under the promise of a bright future among the stars. Old enemies found common ground in their shared wonder at the universe's possibilities. The Council encouraged this unity, praising humanity's quick adaptation to their new reality. Children were particularly fascinated by their new alien friends. Schools added xenobiology and alien language courses to their curricula. Young people dreamed not just of being astronauts, but of becoming interstellar diplomats and trading with species from distant worlds. The Council established embassies in major cities around the world. Their buildings were architectural marvels that seemed to defy physics, structures of crystal and light that changed configuration at will. Inside these embassies, humans and aliens worked together, planning humanity's gradual integration into galactic society. For the first time in human history, the future seemed unlimited. Disease, poverty, and war appeared to be relics of the past as humanity stepped into an age of wonders. The Council's guidance promised to lead Earth into a golden age of peace and prosperity. Yet, in his quiet moments, Dr. Park sometimes caught glimpses of something in the aliens' behavior that gave him pause. Small inconsistencies in their stories, slight hesitations when certain questions were asked, the way they sometimes watched human children with an unreadable intensity. But he brushed these thoughts aside, telling himself he was just being paranoid. After all, they had brought humanity nothing but benefits so far. The first year of contact passed in a whirlwind of progress and discovery. Humanity took its first steps into the galactic community with hope and optimism, unaware that beneath the Council's benevolent facade, darker currents were stirring. The stars had never seemed brighter, but shadows were gathering at the edges of humanity's new dawn. Dr. Sung-Ho Kim stared at his computer screen in the dimly lit office of Earth's Intelligence Division. Something wasn't adding up in the Council's records. He had spent months studying their historical database, and the patterns he was seeing sent chills down his spine. He called an analyst, Hajun Park, who had been helping him piece together the puzzle. "Look at this," Kim said, pointing to his screen. "Remember the Centauri records they shared? Compare the star charts from 50 years ago to now." Park leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he studied the data. "Several systems are missing in the newer charts, but that's impossible. Stars don't just disappear." "Not the stars," Kim replied quietly. "The civilizations that lived there. They worked through the night, cross-referencing data sets and historical records. The Council's database was vast, but certain patterns began to emerge. Park created a timeline of civilizations that had vanished from the records. Each disappeared species had shown remarkable technological progress, particularly in space travel research. There was a civilization called the Irani, Kim said, pulling up an old record. They developed rapidly, like us. The Council established contact, shared technology, helped them advance. Then, nothing. They'd vanish from all records around the time they were developing their own faster-than-light drive. Park found more examples. The Tellurians, the Myth, the Quantum Collective, all gone without explanation. Each disappearance occurred at similar stages of technological development. The Council's records simply stopped mentioning them, as if they had never existed. Young officer Min Ji Kang joined their investigation team. She had a unique talent for cybersecurity and had helped develop Earth's digital defenses by studying Council technology. The Council's security systems were incredibly advanced, but they hadn't counted on humanity's talent for finding backdoors. "Their systems are complex," Kang explained, "but they're built on principles we can understand. It's like a puzzle. Find the pattern, and you can see the gaps." She worked carefully, using techniques that blended Earth's digital expertise with what they'd learned from Council technology. It took weeks of careful probing, each attempt disguised as routine data transfers. Finally, she found her way into their restricted archives. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The disappeared civilizations hadn't simply vanished. They had been eliminated. The Council kept detailed records of each operation, clinical in their precision. They called it Species Management Protocol. Kang showed her findings to Kim and Park in a secure room, triple-checked for surveillance. The Council's own documents revealed their true purpose. They saw themselves as gardeners of the galaxy, pruning away species they deemed threatening to their order. "Look at this passage," Kang pointed out. "They specifically target the youngest members of each species. Their research showed that eliminating the children was the most effective way to prevent species recovery." The three investigators sat in stunned silence as they read through file after file. The Council's logic was coldly efficient. Young minds were the most adaptable, the most likely to advance technology in unexpected ways. By eliminating them, they ensured no species could rise to challenge their authority. Kim thought about his own children, safely asleep in their beds, dreaming of a future among the stars. The council representatives had always shown special interest in Earth's education systems, in their children's development programs. What he had taken for benevolent concern now seemed sinister. "We need to warn people," Park said, "but we have to be careful. If the council realizes we know, they're watching us closely," Kim agreed. "We need to spread this information slowly, carefully. Keep military and government officials first. People who can prepare without raising suspicion." Kang worked on copying the evidence, hiding it within ordinary data transfers. "I found something else," she said. "Earth isn't the first world they're targeting right now. There are others at similar stages of development. The council is efficient. They deal with multiple threats at once." The weight of their discovery pressed down on them. Humanity had welcomed the council as saviors, as guides to a brighter future. Instead, they were dealing with predators who saw Earth's children as a threat to be eliminated. Kim looked at the photos on his desk, his family, his colleagues, all the people who had celebrated humanity's first contact with alien life. The council's ships still hung in orbit, their presence once reassuring, now menacing. Time was running out, and humanity's only hope lay in their ability to prepare without giving away what they knew. As dawn broke over the city, the three investigators began their careful work of alerting Earth's leaders. They knew that every moment counted, but one wrong move would trigger the very catastrophe they hoped to prevent. The race to save humanity's future had begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Director Lee stood at the command center of Earth Defense Headquarters, watching the massive display screens that covered the walls. It was a quiet morning until the proximity alarms began blaring. New ships were appearing through jump points, far more than the usual council diplomatic vessels. His coffee cup slipped from his fingers when he saw the first energy readings. These weren't the familiar council embassy ships. These were warships, their weapons already powered and ready. "Get me New Hope Colony," he shouted. The communications officer worked frantically at her station. On screen, they could see hundreds of council vessels emerging above Earth's largest colonial world. The colony's defense systems hadn't even activated. They still recognized the council ships as friendly. The first strikes hit with surgical precision. The colonial capital's education center vanished in a flash of light. Before anyone could react, the children's medical center followed. The council ships methodically worked their way through every location where young humans gathered. "Sir, incoming transmission from Administrator Choi," the communications officer called out, her voice shaking. Tai-Young Choi's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, alarms were blaring and people were running in panic. "They came without warning," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "They're targeting anywhere children gather. Schools, homes, hospitals, all gone. They're ignoring our military bases completely. They want us to watch this happen." Lee grabbed the microphone. "We're sending help. Hold on, Tai-Young. Just hold on." "No time," Choi replied. "Their ships are everywhere. You need to warn the other colonies. Save who you can. And remember what they did here." The transmission cut off as another explosion rocked the administrator's building. In the command center, reports began flooding in from other colonies. The council had timed their attacks perfectly, striking every human settlement simultaneously. The pattern was the same everywhere: precision strikes against civilian targets, specifically locations with high concentrations of children. "Get me Earth Command," Lee ordered. "And someone wake up the president." But communications were already being jammed. The council had studied human defense systems for years, learning every weakness. They knew exactly how to cripple humanity's response. Through gaps in the interference, desperate messages made it through. "A teacher on New Hope. They're targeting the schools. There. A hospital director. The children's ward is gone. Everyone's gone. A colonial defense officer. They're letting us watch." Why are they letting us watch? Lee watched helplessly as colony after colony reported massive civilian casualties. The council ships maintained perfect formation, their attacks calculated for maximum effect. They weren't just killing. They were sending a message. Earth's military forces scrambled to respond, but they had been carefully positioned away from the colonies by Council defense advisors months earlier. By the time the first human warships arrived, many colonies were already lost. In the New Hope colony's last moments, security cameras captured scenes that would haunt humanity forever. Parents trying to shield their children from the precision strikes. Teachers leading students into shelters that offered no protection against the Council's weapons. Medical staff desperately trying to evacuate young patients as their hospitals crumbled around them. The Council ships never engaged in direct combat. They simply completed their assigned targets and departed, leaving the military bases intact. They wanted survivors to witness the aftermath, to understand the completeness of their betrayal. Hours later, when the first rescue ships reached New Hope, they found a changed world. The colony's adult population had been left largely intact, forced to witness the systematic elimination of their children. The Council's message was clear. They weren't just killing children, they were destroying humanity's future. Director Lee stayed at his post through it all, documenting every transmission, every report, every image. His hands shook as he compiled the data, but his voice remained steady as he sent out a final message to all Earth forces. Remember New Hope. Remember our children. This is no longer about survival. This is about justice. As the terrible day drew to a close, the full scope of the Council's betrayal became clear. They had spent years studying humanity, learning where they were most vulnerable, preparing for this moment. What appeared as benevolent interest in human development had been reconnaissance for genocide. In the ruins of his office, Administrator Choi's last written message was found. They made us trust them. They made us show them our children. Never trust them again. The words would become a rallying cry for the resistance that was about to begin. The stars that had once promised humanity a bright future now looked down on scenes of unimaginable loss. But in the darkness of that terrible night, something else was building. A determination that would reshape the galaxy. Humanity had been betrayed, but they would not be broken. Admiral Jin Wukang stood in the Great Hall of the United Earth Council, where representatives from every nation had gathered for this emergency session. The room was silent except for his footsteps as he approached the podium. The faces before him showed the same grief and anger that he carried in his own heart. "I stand before you not just as an admiral," he began, his voice filling the chamber, "but as a father who lost his daughter on New Hope Colony. Like many of you, I watched helplessly as the Council revealed their true nature. But today, we take our first steps toward justice." The screens behind him displayed images of the devastation, each picture driving home the depth of the Council's betrayal. He continued, "Our differences, our old rivalries, mean nothing now. The enemy we face doesn't care about our borders or our politics. They see us all as one thing, a threat to be eliminated." In the audience, former enemies sat side by side, their past conflicts forgotten in the face of this greater threat. Chinese generals nodded in agreement with American admirals. Russian scientists shared notes with European researchers. The world had changed overnight. Research Director Yun Ji-moon stepped forward to present her findings. Her team had been studying Council technology for years, and now that knowledge would be turned against them. "Their shields have a pattern," she explained, pointing to detailed diagrams. "A rhythm we can predict and counter. We've already begun developing new systems based on this understanding." The assembly watched as she demonstrated prototype shield technology. It wasn't as advanced as the Council's systems, but it was something they had never seen before. A human adaptation of alien science. "We learn fast," she said, a fierce pride in her voice. "They taught us too well, and now we'll use that knowledge to protect our people." Weapons specialist Da Hyun Kim followed with his presentation. His team had been working around the clock, analyzing Council weapons signatures from the attacks. Their weapons are precise, but that precision is also a weakness. They follow patterns we can predict and defend against. All around Earth, the gears of industry turned with new purpose. Car factories retooled to produce armored vehicles. Shipyards that once built cruise ships now constructed warships. Computer companies redirected their production lines to military systems. The entire planet moved with single-minded focus. In orbit, construction crews worked tirelessly to build defensive platforms. They used techniques learned from the Council, but with human innovations that would make their defenses harder to counter. The Council had taught humanity about space construction, never imagining those lessons would be used against them. Training centers operated day and night. Young recruits learned alongside veteran soldiers, all of them mastering new technologies and tactics. They trained with a determination born of loss, each of them carrying memories of friends and family who had died in the attacks. Admiral Kang visited these facilities regularly, watching as Earth's combined military forces learned to work as one. Russian pilots flew alongside Japanese crews. Brazilian soldiers trained with Korean special forces. The old boundaries had melted away, replaced by a shared purpose. In her laboratory, Director Moon worked with an international team of scientists. They had taken Council shield technology and modified it, adding elements the aliens had never considered. They think in straight lines, she told her team. We need to think in curves, in patterns they won't expect. Kim's weapons development facilities worked at full capacity, testing new defense systems designed to counter Council technology. His teams had studied every second of footage from the colony attacks, learning the Council's tactics, finding their blind spots. Underground bunkers were constructed beneath every major city. But these weren't just shelters. They were fully equipped command centers, ready to coordinate Earth's defense from anywhere on the planet. The Council would find no easy targets this time. Space-based early warning systems spread out through the solar system, hidden in asteroid fields and camouflaged as space debris. Earth would not be caught off guard again. Every approach vector was watched, every unusual reading investigated. As the days turned into weeks, Earth's transformation continued. The planet that the Council had considered an easy target was becoming a fortress. But more than that, it was becoming unified in a way that had seemed impossible before the attacks. Admiral Kang concluded his address to the Council with words that would be repeated across the planet. They thought they would break us. Instead, they have forged us into something stronger. When they return, and they will return, they will not find the same world they betrayed. They will find humanity united, humanity prepared, and humanity ready for justice. The assembly rose as one, their applause echoing through the chamber. The sound carried the weight of their determination, their unity, and their unwavering resolve. Earth was changing, preparing, strengthening. The Council had sought to eliminate a threat, but they had instead created something they had never imagined. A humanity that stood as one. Fleet Commander Su-Jin Lee studied the holographic display showing Council supply routes. Her small command ship drifted silently in the shadow of an asteroid, running dark to avoid detection. Around her, the crew worked in hushed voices, preparing for their first major strike against the Council. Their patterns are too perfect, she said to her tactical officer. They follow the same routes, the same schedules, every time. They don't know how to adapt. A small smile crossed her face as she marked their target points. The attack force consisted of 20 small ships, each one modified for speed and stealth. They weren't proper warships. Earth couldn't match the Council's massive battle cruisers. Instead, they had converted civilian vessels, adding weapons and stealth systems in ways the Council never expected. Strike Group 1, move into position, Lee ordered. On her display, 5 ships slipped out of their hiding places, running silent as they approached the Council supply line. The massive Council transport ships moved in perfect formation, their escort vessels maintaining textbook positions. Captain Jae-hwan Kim led his stealth squadron toward the Council's communication relay station. His ships were painted with light-absorbing materials, making them nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. They had studied Council sensor systems for months, learning their blind spots. The attack began without warning. Lee's strike groups hit the supply convoy from multiple directions, their weapons modified to bypass Council shields. The Council ships tried to respond, but their tactics were rigid, predictable. By the time they turned to face one threat, 3 more had already struck from different directions. Like fighting a computer program, Lee observed as she watched the Council ships struggle to adapt. Their responses were technically perfect but completely unable to handle the chaos of human battle tactics. Kim's squadron reached their target, launching specialized interference devices that attached to the Council's communication arrays. The massive relay station, responsible for coordinating Council forces across 3 sectors, began to lose connection with its fleet. The Council ships, cut off from their command structure, fell into disarray. Their rigid military doctrine required constant communication with higher authorities. Without it, they defaulted to basic defensive positions that made them even more vulnerable. Yu-Jin Park watched from the bridge of her converted mining vessel as the Council dreadnought turned ponderously to face the latest attack. The massive ship was almost 10 times the size of her vessel, but size had its disadvantages. Her crew had spent weeks modifying their mining equipment into weapons, creating something the Council had never seen before. "Activate the breaker beam," Park ordered. The mining ship's main cutting beam, originally designed to break up asteroids, had been modified with elements of Council shield technology. The resulting weapon bypassed the dreadnought's defenses completely, cutting through its hull like paper. The Council ships began to retreat, their formation breaking apart under the continued harassment from Lee's strike groups. They had never faced an enemy that refused to fight according to their rules of engagement. Human ships would strike from impossible angles, retreat when they should attack, and attack when they should retreat. Word of the victory spread quickly through subspace channels. Other species, long oppressed by Council dominance, took notice. The mighty Council fleet, previously thought invincible, had been bloodied by the very species they had tried to eliminate. Lee gathered her forces for their next strike, already planning new tactics. The Council would adapt eventually, but humans would adapt faster. Her ships disappeared back into the darkness of space, leaving behind a shattered Council convoy and a message. Humanity would not be easy prey. In the days that followed, similar attacks occurred across Council space. Small human ships would appear from nowhere, strike hard at vulnerable targets, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The Council's mighty dreadnoughts found themselves helpless against opponents that refused to engage them directly. Park's modified mining vessels became the terror of Council shipping lanes. Other captains copied her tactics, converting industrial equipment into weapons the Council had no defense against. Their perfect shields were useless against tools designed to cut through asteroids. Kim's stealth squadron struck at communication and sensor stations throughout Council space, creating blind spots in their carefully maintained network. Each successful raid provided more intelligence, more understanding of Council weaknesses, and more opportunities for future strikes. The Council's response remained rigid, predictable. They increased patrol strength, but kept using the same routes. They added more escort ships, but maintained the same formations. They couldn't comprehend an enemy that didn't follow their rules of warfare. In her command ship, Lee planned her next series of attacks. The holo display showed dozens of potential targets, each one carefully selected to cause maximum disruption with minimum risk. The Council's empire was vast, but that size made it impossible to protect everything. "Let them chase shadows," she told her crew. "While they move their fleets to protect one target, we'll strike 3 more they left unguarded. They don't understand that yet, the advantage of being unpredictable." The stars watched silently as humanity's hit-and-run campaign continued. Each small victory built confidence, developed new tactics, and showed other species that the Council wasn't invincible. The galaxy was changing, one strike at a time, and humanity was leading the way. Diplomat Hyun Wusong sat across from the Ardari representative, whose crystalline body structure caught the light in fascinating ways. The meeting took place on a neutral trading station, Far from Council space, the Ardari's own children had been targeted by the Council centuries ago, their population still recovering from the loss. "We understand your pain." The Ardari spoke softly, their crystal form pulsing with gentle lights. "The Council told us we were too aggressive, too unpredictable. They said our young ones needed to be contained. We believed them, until it was too late." Song shared the records from Earth's colonies, showing the Council's latest atrocities. The Ardari lights dimmed in shared grief as they watched. More species joined the meeting. The Melthians with their flowing liquid forms, the silicon-based Kirith, each with their own stories of Council treachery. Mirai Choi worked in her Information Warfare Center, surrounded by screens showing data flows across galactic networks. Her team had infiltrated Council communication systems, planting evidence of their crimes where member species could find it. The truth spread like a virus through the Council's own networks. "Look at this," she called to her team, pointing to a surge of communications from a Council core world. "Their own people are starting to ask questions. The data we planted about the Melthian purge is causing riots in their central systems." The alliance grew stronger each day. The Ardari shared their crystal tech weapons, capable of bypassing Council shields. The Melthians provided star charts showing hidden Council facilities. The Kirith offered their quantum computing expertise to crack Council codes. Song traveled between allied species, building a coalition unlike anything the galaxy had seen. In a secret meeting chamber on the edge of known space, representatives gathered to share intelligence and coordinate their efforts. "The Council maintains power through isolation," Song explained to the gathered allies. "They keep us apart, make us think we're alone in our suffering. But together, we can expose their lies." Choi's information warfare campaign began showing results. Council member species discovered records of atrocities committed against civilizations they had been told died naturally. Images of destroyed colonies and eliminated children spread through public networks, impossible to suppress. On Council worlds, questions turned to protests. Member species that had loyally served for centuries began to demand answers. The Council's careful web of lies and manipulation started to unravel. The Ardari fleet joined Earth's guerrilla attacks, their crystal ships appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Melthian infiltrators slipped through Council security, gathering more evidence of their crimes. The Kirith's quantum computers cracked Council encryption, exposing more secrets. "Their greatest weakness," Song told the Alliance leadership, "is their belief in their own superiority. They never imagined their victims would work together. They never planned for united resistance." Council enforcers tried to suppress the growing rebellion, but found themselves fighting on too many fronts. Every time they stopped one leak, 3 more appeared. Every secret they buried was dug up and broadcast across the galaxy. Choi discovered Council records of species even older than the Ardari, civilizations that had vanished without trace. She made sure these records reached the current Council member species, showing them that their trusted leaders had been eliminating potential rivals for millennia. The Council's perfect order began to crack. Member species withdrew their forces, refusing to support further attacks. Some openly joined the Alliance, bringing their advanced technology with them. In her command center, Choi watched as the Council's information network fragmented. They built their power on control of information, she explained to Song. Now that control is slipping away. Their own people are turning against them. The Alliance grew stronger each day. Species that had once feared to even speak against the Council now openly defied them. The truth of their crimes spread from system to system, planet to planet, until it could no longer be contained. Song continued his diplomatic work, turning former enemies into allies. Each new species brought their own technologies, their own strategies, their own determination to see justice done. The Council had created their own destruction by giving their victims a common cause. In the grand meeting hall of the Alliance, representatives from dozens of species gathered to plan the final push. The Council's power was crumbling, their own member species deserting them as the truth of their atrocities became known. They thought they could keep us divided forever. Song addressed the gathered allies. They thought we would never learn of each other's suffering. But today, we stand united. Today, justice approaches. The stars seemed brighter now, as ships from allied species moved through space together. The Council's perfect order was falling apart, replaced by something new, something they had never imagined possible. Their victims had united, and their day of reckoning was coming. Ambassador Sung Ho Yoon stood in the Great Hall of the new Galactic Confederation headquarters. The building rose from the ruins of the old council chamber, its design incorporating elements from every member species. Where the council's architecture had been imposing and cold, the Confederation building welcomed visitors with warmth and light. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the chamber. Former council members sat alongside the races they once helped oppress, all equal now under the new charter. Yoon approached the podium, carrying the document that would shape the galaxy's future. "We gather here not to create another empire," he began, "but to ensure that no species ever again faces what we faced. The Children's Guardian Protocol is more than law. It is our promise to future generations." In orbit above Earth, Commander Jae-Yun Kim inspected her fleet. The ship's combined technology from all member species, human determination, Arderi crystal tech, Melthian stealth systems. They would patrol the galaxy, protecting developing civilizations from interference or harm. On New Hope Colony, young Sue Park tended the memorial gardens. Where destruction had once reigned, flowers from 100 worlds now bloomed. Each garden told a story. Each plant represented a child lost to the Council's cruelty. Park had lost his wife and 3 children in the attack, but found purpose in maintaining these living memories. "The gardens remind us why we fought," he told visitors. "Not for revenge, but for hope, so that no other parent would know our pain." Children from the colony's new families often helped him tend the plants, their laughter a healing sound in a place that had known such sorrow. The Confederation grew stronger each day. Unlike the Council's rigid hierarchy, it welcomed new ideas and approaches. When a newly discovered civilization showed signs of intelligence, the Confederation sent observers to protect them from exploitation. Kim's Guardian fleet became legendary across the galaxy. They appeared wherever needed, preventing stronger species from preying on the weak. The fleet's ships bore names honoring the children lost in the Council's attacks, their memories serving as a constant reminder of their mission. Yoon worked tirelessly to ensure the Confederation's charter remained true to its founding principles. Every member species had equal voice in decisions. Resources were shared fairly. Knowledge flowed freely between worlds. The mistakes of the Council would not be repeated. In schools across Confederation space, children learned the history that led to these changes. They studied the Council's fall not as a triumph of revenge, but as a lesson in justice and unity. The memorial gardens became places of pilgrimage, where young people from all species came to understand the price of peace. The Arderi crystal gardens glowed with new life, their children once again filling their cities with light. The Melthians built great learning centers where knowledge was freely shared. The Kareth opened their quantum networks to all species, creating a new age of understanding. "We remember not to remain in grief," Commander Kim told her crew, "but to ensure it never happens again." Her ships patrolled the borders of young civilizations, their presence a warning to any who would repeat the Council's crimes. Park watched new families settle on New Hope, their children playing in parks built where destruction had once ruled. The colony became a symbol of renewal, its recovery showing how life could flourish again after even the darkest times. The stars that had once seemed threatening now offered promise. Young species looking up at the night sky would find protectors, not predators. The Confederation's ships carried hope instead of fear, their missions guided by the determination that the galaxy's children would know only peace. Ambassador Yoon often visited the memorial gardens, drawing strength from their quiet beauty. "We built something new," he would tell visitors, "not just from the ashes of the old order, but from our shared dream of a better future." As the years passed, The Confederation proved that unity was stronger than dominance. Species that had once fought now worked together, their combined knowledge creating wonders the Council could never have imagined. The galaxy entered a new age of discovery and growth, protected by those who had learned the true cost of peace. The end of this story marked the beginning of another, one written in the laughter of children from 1,000 worlds, in the quiet beauty of memorial gardens, and in the determined hearts of those who guarded the galaxy's future. The stars shone brighter now, their light falling on a galaxy transformed by humanity's unwavering spirit and the unity of all species who chose hope over fear.